Well, let's take a look at some of those services, because we want to involve our audience in a minute. But before we do, what are some of these 5G-based cloud-native services and applications that will ultimately generate revenue for CSPs? What are we looking at, Alexis?
So in our case, we have launched some pilots in order to define with partners what are the usage that we have behind the 5G, and to move from the technology to a usage in order to provide to the customer the service with an usage. And it's not clear, because it's true that the technology is so powerful, we can do so many things, that we have to define the good usage behind, and we are not able to do it alone. We can't say what the customer wants, and this ecosystem is what you say, it's verticals are totally new. It's healthcare, it could be education, it could be government, it could be many things, and so we have to work with all of them to define the good usage before launching something. So now we are testing in a humbling way, but doing that.
Great. Renu, let's go down the line. Renu, what services and applications are we looking at?
Just based on some of the research we've been doing, there are some use cases which are a little bit horizontal. They can span across multiple industries, like vision inferencing, which can be used for like either digital security surveillance or facial recognition, or industrial site safety, or retail productivity analysis. So you have, so vision inferencing is like a horizontal that can span multiple verticals. There's also things related to video and media and content delivery and visual cloud. I mean, 82% of internet traffic is video and media. So I think there's going to be a lot of different types of use cases that's related to that type of a data workload. And then based on the different IoT verticals, where we saw the biggest promise, or likely the earliest deployments, because it translates directly to business value, was industrial and retail to begin with, because you could see some quick tangible benefits with some of the use cases on 4G and other forms of connectivity even before 5G.
And Adrian, you've been looking at some IoT-based use cases here.
Yeah, so a couple of quick examples of industrial IoT then. Just building on your video analytics point. If you've got a manufacturing environment and you want to use video analytics to look at a machine, and if that machine rocks slightly, then you want to be able to send in your maintenance crew. So we tested this over 4G and 5G. So in 4G, you can reliably run one high-def camera. The problem is it doesn't scale. So you can't run two high-def cameras, and you can't run ultra-high-def. So you need 5G to be able to do that. And then 5G gives you the capability to analyze that machine, the video analytics, to be able to detect an anomaly, to then switch to slow-mo video recording, and then send that out to an expert off-site over 5G to analyze that video, and then inform the local maintenance crew what they need to do to keep that machine running on that shift until it can be taken out of production during a natural kind of change of manufacturing cycle. Another very quick example is we've just conducted the first trials of 5G at Birmingham Hospital for remote use of a haptic glove by paramedics. So these guys go out in an ambulance, they attend an accident scene, they can then be guided by an expert doctor from the hospital over the 5G network to do ultrasound on somebody lying in the road who's had an accident. The expert in the hospital uses a joystick to send signals to that haptic glove that dictates where they want the ultrasound scan to go. And they can then decide on whether to treat the patient at site or bring them back to the hospital. So there's just two examples of how we see services dramatically changing with 5G.
Domenico.
I will stick to the example of the edge and of Mac, because really there makes sense to have cloud native application. So we have a very good example. So we are in a car museum here, right? So the collaboration we are having with Mercedes in Formula One. So there is a lot of data management of all the data collected by the sensors on the Formula One cars that are happening on site in the box. Versus what was happening before, that all the data were collected, stored, then sent back in the UK, etc. So this is this is an example of how much can be done in terms of data crunching at the edge, closer to where the data are generated, and this can help a lot of real-time examples over there. So low latency, etc., is strictly connected to this as well, and can have applicability in industrial IoT, can have applicability on logistics for a number of industry where these type of requirements are quite normal, right? So, yeah.
And Vicky, you obviously see, we talked about the edge here.
I think there's, I think to your point, we're seeing lots of applications in the fan experience in all kinds of venues where lots of people congregate and where there's a desire to get information and use that information to deliver a superior fan experience to people in stadiums or in, whatever kind of venue where they congregate. And you can do that much more in a personalized manner with some of the 5G technologies coming out. Cognitive video is huge, and everybody's mentioned that. I think that there are real applications for that now in every vertical that we operate in. And smart cities are still a huge opportunity because it really allows the technology to be put to use for good, not just for profit. And I think that's really important to people right now. The challenge in smart cities, though, is, most communities have elections every 4 years. And we find it is difficult to get an idea from inception to execution in place in a lot of communities because of that transition that happens just as a natural element of turnover in a community.
Thank you all for those. We did promise interaction, so now's your chance. If anybody, and I see a hand already, if anybody has a question for our panelists, now's your opportunity. We do have 1 or 2 microphones. Okay, there's one down here, just at the very, very front. It's been waiting patiently. If you could just say who you are and who you represent, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ahmed Ijaz from Ericsson. Thank you for this insightful discussion. Now, clearly, I think from your discussion, it seems as if 5G, industrial IoT, and edge computing are going to be some key drivers for cloud-native adoption. But regardless of when these drivers or these tailwinds happen, there are many operators who are heavily invested into virtualization, and they look at cloud-native with a varying degree of skepticism or excitement. However, for many other operators, say, for example, many operators in Africa, who are yet to embark on, say, even the virtualization journey. They're still in the physical world. Do you think it makes sense, it's a good idea, to leapfrog to cloud native? And I think there was one comment, as you know, there's at least a redeeming quality with virtualization. Your operations learned a lot with it. So at least that's one huge advantage with this journey in the yesteryears. However, going forward for those operators who can potentially leapfrog or focus more on cloud native, what do you think is the key checklist of requirements that should be checked before, hey, yes, we can jump right away to cloud native?
Great. Who wants to tackle that? Who wants to tackle the, can we go straight to cloud native if we haven't already started our virtualization expertise? Alexia, it's a bit unfair, but you do have operations in Africa, don't you? So
Spain is North Africa. So I think that it could be done in a smart way. So it's not necessary to do virtualization, as mentioned before, as we wanted at the beginning. But we can do a small virtualization that when the benefit is clear in order to provide new services or operational benefits. And the benefit is the organization, is to modify the way we work, to have the operational team with the engineering team, with marketing, IT network, all together working. And it's true that this virtualization modifies the way we work. And it's great to start with something. So maybe to define a little step with benefits coming from the business or coming from the operational optimization, and to do it. And it could be a good way to also to acquire the knowledge from the operator point of view, because when we are in appliance world, it's more the vendor that has knowledge. We are more with providing solutions, and we manage the vendors. In this modification, we are more involved. We are knowing better what is happening in the network, and it's a good way to acquire this knowledge that will be No matter if it's cloud native or not cloud native, this type of knowledge at the end is the mindset, is the way we work.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a path that says you could crawl, walk, run. But I think if you haven't gone there at all, it depends on how long you can wait. Because if you wait too long and until everything is cloud native, then that company may be out of business because some other disruptor will have come in and taken over operations with some other solution that wasn't available. But the reality is that the functions that most network operators need to run a network are not fully available in the stack as cloud native today. And they're going to have to be able to write their own or build their own. And I think that's not necessarily the core expertise of most of those types of companies.
I think, as you said earlier as well, there's so many companies out there that want to help move telco to a cloud-native environment, ranging from startups through to fully-fledged household names, that they would want to work with companies in Africa as well to take them on that journey. And it really depends then on the business case for that particular telco as to how quickly they want to make that jump. So it will depend on how fast they want to invest, how much money they have, where their customers are going, and their revenue stream, and that will help determine how quickly they make that move.
I think the problem in Africa has been historically the scarcity of qualified engineers. And this drove even a tendency, right, to outsource or to go towards managed services of the network, right? So I think the point is different. The real question is not, to do one-step or double-step migration. The real question mark is, do we believe that the network becomes a core asset of the business and needs to be managed by the operator? Because this is the real point. In the moment, you go cloud native, the dynamicity that you are bringing in the way the network is deployed needs to be compatible with the business priorities that you are getting. And are we sure that having an outsourcer doing that job on behalf of the company is the right recipe? I think this is a bigger problem, right? That needs to be addressed in certain countries, together again with the need to have the proper engineers working in operation. That has been historically big issue in Africa.
Yeah. I can give one example where one of the operators we were working with in India wanted to leapfrog, for one of the virtual functions, but they said, "Hey, we need help. We need cloud-native experts embedded in our team. So Intel, can you give us 3 or 4 experts to embed in our team?" And we were struggling, we were wondering where we would get them from. We didn't have them internally to embed in their team. We were trying to find them from some of the the outsourcing companies. So until some of the fundamental or foundational ecosystem comes along or moves along, it's going to be hard for some of these companies to even leapfrog. So while you can't wait for the whole ecosystem to become cloud native, you need some foundational parts to become cloud native. You do need the availability of engineers or expertise, technology. You need we've been making contributions into open source, Kubernetes, Multis, and others. You do need companies that downstream that and commercialize it, and you need some of that basic building blocks available for some things to even for companies to truly leapfrog.
Great, thanks. Another question? There's a hand at the back I can see. Got the mic already.
Hello, Francis Haysom from Appledore Research. We're obviously at an NFV conference, but I just wondered whether the panel feels that we've got a situation where we see virtual network functions and virtual network applications as something that's very distinct from other functions and other applications. Does the panel feel that the emphasis on network functions being something different than other software functions is the biggest impediment to cloud native?
Well, As a network operator, I have to care a lot about the network function. So that's where my emphasis is, because that's where the disruption is happening for us initially at the edge, and where we deploy those on our network. So, virtualized firewalls, virtualized routing, et cetera. So those have been the primary ones right now. But as customers come to me and say, I also want to deploy my applications in the same device at that edge, that's where the problem becomes apparent, that I have to consider, these hybrid worlds where maybe for now a VM has to exist with, the container stack that my customer wants to have on the same set of infrastructure. So it's a new set of problems that we have to solve in terms of how we manage and support that. I learned a few things actually today from different folks here that will help me figure out what the right strategy is going to be for us as we go on that journey.
Yeah. So let me be precise, otherwise Francis is not happy, right? So, we defined the network function, what is standardized by 3GPP, okay? So it is cloud native in 5G, and this is 5G core, right? So while the cloud native applications, for example, are the third-party applications that can be hosted at the cloud edge in order to provide whatever type of services from industrial IoT to healthcare, etc. So there is a difference. Of course, there is a difference because the cloud network functions are standardized, so there is a standardization. We know what to expect from each of them and the way they should expose their own outcome to the rest of the software architecture. Correct? For the cloud application, the reason to adopt cloud-native application is, again, in lowering the total cost of ownership, that especially at the edge is an extremely meaningful topic.
Thanks. Any other questions from our audience members? Oh, there's one at the very back.
Yeah, there's always question in the back. So I have again on UbiCube. So I just want to know, in your journey towards cloud-native applications, if I'm looking at the back office, how many of your OSS, BSS systems are already cloud native?
I'm a vendor, so if you want, I can answer for my portfolio, yes, easily. So I have pretty much the entire portfolio is cloudified with different level of maturity, because not the entire portfolio is fully, let's say, microservices based and cloud native. But so today pretty much the entire portfolio can be delivered by us in on-prem project, as was traditionally done in the past, in private cloud or from public cloud as well. This is the potential. Then the demand we are getting from customers are to stay on-prem or on private cloud. There are very, very few exceptions of customers who are really asking to deploy, back-end applications on public cloud.
I think as well, it's if we consider traditional networking services like MPLS that have been around for best part of 20 years, then they're going to be delivered on what we might call older systems infrastructure, probably co-developed by the telco and maybe some board-in software as well. The transition now is to buy off-the-shelf products produced by third parties who are experts in that particular field, as opposed to developing in-house. So I think you'll find a lot of telcos are in that transition period and have still got almost like a dual stack where they'll support their products that have been around for a considerable amount of time on perhaps an older stack, and the newer products are being developed on the perhaps more cloud-native stack.
I think we have time for one more question from our audience. Is anyone sort of nearer the front or?
Hi, my name's Simon Elkins from Layer 123, and it's a bit of a technical question, really. So a few years ago, you had the open systems interconnection model, and do you feel that's now relevant with the cloud? Because back in the day, it surprised a deal of separation between the layers. So do you find the edges are now being blurred, or is it still relevant?
Is the OSI model still relevant in our cloud world?
I
with cloud?
Because I'm still trying to deliver services in service of the application layer, and all the other layers in the stack have to work together in order to provide the application experience. So that's not the technical answer, but that's the answer from how we have to build products for customers, and I have to thread all those layers together. So in our product development, OSI still matters.
I think, just to build on that, I totally agree. I think if you're looking at an SLA from a telco, then you can look at an actual performance SLA. If you're looking for something like packet delivery, then that's still at layer 3. So you need to operate at layer 7 and layer 3 to deliver, I think, the overall SLA a customer is looking for.
And I think some of the concept around service mesh is also coming from that, where you do need east-west communication between the microservices even at the kind of the below the layer 7. So the concept of service mesh is to kind of foster that type of microservice intercommunications.
Great. Well, if it's all right with everyone else, we are out of time. We've just gone over our deadline by only a couple of minutes, so we're quite good this year. Please thank our panelists for their time this evening.